Hi.
Hi, everybody. So this is Stephanie Kalota again for America's Heroes Group, and I am very excited to welcome a good friend of mine, John Moses. And it's so weird to say your first name first. So a little bit background, John or Moses and I know each other because it'll be 18 years this year since we were actually deployed together for Operation Iraqi Freedom to Kuwait. So I'd love to introduce everybody. So John Moses, he is the president and co-founder of MAA and the Massachusetts Afghan Alliance. He's a Sergeant First Class retired, a veteran of the Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, a Hoover Veteran Fellow, executive and co-founder of MAA. And during the Afghan evacuation, he served as an Evac fellow, helping 68 Afghans reach the United States, with dozens more following in the years after. John is also the senior local school board member in his 9th year of elected office of the towns of
Chelmsford, Massachusetts.
I apologize. I am a Southerner, and I am sorry about my cat. So welcome, John. How are you doing right now in Massachusetts?
Everything's well. It's great to see you. This is probably the first time we've spoken in 18 years or so.
Voice.
Right. I think it's amazing how long those connections last, right? So we knew each other a long time ago. And I think you're retired, and I'm also retired. I retired as an E7 back in 2019. So it's great to be here, and I appreciate the time.
No problem. Yep. I retired the same year, E7 as well. So we're here. I brought you on so we can talk about the executive order that actually suspended the Afghan refugee program, actually all refugee program.
Yeah.
So can you introduce us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of background on it first. So Massachusetts Afghan Alliance. So when we helped people out through the evacuation, after we saw a lot of different types of landings for Afghans, right? And the resettlement process was confusing, getting people out. And so mostly veterans, diplomats, a lot of civilians that had worked with Afghans in Afghanistan came together over the past 4 years since the collapse, 3.5 years, to really help Afghans both resettle and get out of places like Pakistan. We've supported all kinds of people. So for the refugee class, right now, the executive order that's come out is the U.S. RAP has been suspended. So who does that affect, right? So we've been helping these. There are other refugees out there. This is going to affect all refugee classes. I'm speaking specifically how it affects the 1,660 people that were due to come out. Mm-hmm. So there are a lot of different statuses in all of this. Essentially, it boils down to if you have to come in as a refugee, there are no flights for you, and they are canceled. Now, the thing about these particular 1,660 is they've already been vetted. A lot of them are actually being supported by something called a private resettlement group, which is essentially a group of people that raise a ton of money. They find housing, so they're not a burden on the community, because that's a lot of the issues they have there. So these people were set up. They had housing. They had sponsors. Some of them are unaccompanied minors, and some of them are the sons of service members, or the sons and daughters of service members. So,
oh goodness, okay,
yeah. So, but in short, So just in terms of the EO, though, it is a legitimate EO. The effect was immediate. They canceled the flights immediately. There are a ton of people fighting right now in the background. Afghan Evac is one of the big orgs fighting for them. We're trying to get to Republican congressmen and women that served like we did. And but it has had a dramatic effect on families. And I'll pause there. I'm sure you have some questions. So otherwise, I'll just keep going.
Keep going. You're good. This is great. There's been a lot of great information on this, because this is something that's not a big topic that happens on America's Heroes Group, because we do specifically stay on veterans benefits or things like that, benefits towards military. But this is something that has been a really big focus of veterans, because we've served with these people while we were in times of war.
Yeah. Well, the moral injury of the evacuation, it all really started there. A lot of us really were spurred into motion by like a big PTSD reaction, right? Stress, go back into battle mode, get on the phone in your kitchen and try to save people. Mm-hmm. And essentially, some of us have now put our lives into it, right? I co-founded an organization with an Afghan woman called Massachusetts Afghan Alliance, and I am with Afghans all the time. They are part of my support structure. They're people that I really care about. And specifically, we have what are called reunification cases that are something I put a lot of focus into, right? There are some Afghans, for example, we have a person in my town who was separated at Abbey Gate. So essentially him and his son went one direction when things blew up. Mom, everybody else another direction. They come to the United States expecting to be reunited. They didn't ask to come to the United States, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these people fall under this 1,660 people, right? These people they're canceling right now. And under the refugee system, now that they're going to shut that down, they also cannot reunify with their families. And they've already been separated for over 3 years. So we have fought through Congress, through the Senate. We have fought through the executive branch for these families. And now just today, I had to have a phone call with a 17-year-old kid that started high school in America as an Afghan, and tell him that he's got at least 4 months before we find out what happens to his family. So how they're going to get here. And a lot of these families on the other side. And there are dozens of these families in Massachusetts alone, and they're all over the country.
Yes. How long does the process usually take for these people?
The reunification cases, so one of the things that's interesting is the government doesn't have the ability to tell you how long things will take. So we never thought that you would set, so reunification cases generally outside of the Afghan world take a really long time. And that's what a lot of people say. Well, it's fair. They got to be in the line. And I understand that. But also we didn't spend 20 years in the Congo. So we know them, right? We know their families, and half of their families now are here. And in some of these cases, it's really not just traumatic for the service member. And if you want to talk, I mean, I have an active PTSD rating. I've done significant therapy after, and so have a lot of us really done a lot of therapy after what happened in Afghanistan, right?
Yeah.
And collapse, like watching your war end and all the things you care about. And it's just the trauma as actually spreads out into the community, right? So you have volunteers, you have, some 7-year-old woman that didn't go to Afghanistan helping an Afghan that's like, my family isn't here. So the EOs are tough. The 1660 that got canceled, and the other refugees. There's some other EOs that come out. We track them pretty closely. This does real damage to our community. It does real damage to people. A lot of these people are sponsored by veterans like us. They are, if you assist, there's a couple things that have come out of this. These are publishable. This is not political. Depending on how much you help Afghans, and if you end up helping somebody they deem illegal or not, there's some real unclarity, but they're talking about being able to take away 501c3 status. So I think for us as operators, though, as people that are trying to help, we have to focus on the mission in front of us, right? That are people here. Make sure they do all the right things. Make sure they have the paperwork. Make sure they're informed and have education on what to do if ICE, has questions, right? Because these people have been through a process. They've been vetted, and they are generally, a lot of them, again, supported, especially Afghans. But that's my thing.
It's okay. You can speak just for Afghans, because that's a really big thing right now. And a lot of veterans are tied directly to that. So it's okay for us to focus on that, even though this EO does, is a compass to all refugee programs. So it's okay. So there's a few things that I've seen already that's been coming out online that is kind of like misinformation or maybe disinformation. And I wanted to ask your side on this. For some of these Afghans that are trying to be part of the program, are they still in Afghanistan, and are the Taliban allowing them to leave for this refugee program?
Yeah, so the refugees, there's a couple different programs. So SIVs, fortunately, have not been affected yet, right? So SIVs are in a process. There's a legal path for them to come to the United States. Flights are still moving, right? Not
SIVs.
The flights. Special immigrant visas. So anybody that, I got to watch the jargon. Special immigrant visas. So anybody that worked with us in Afghanistan, same thing in Iraq, they could apply after they had a certain set of requirements. They had to have security. They had... the vetting is actually very difficult for SIV. That's why I think it's still active. So those people, I want to give hope that those are still moving, where they're still getting notifications and they're still flying. Refugees do remain in Afghanistan. They remain in Pakistan. The ones in Pakistan are really in danger. There are some in other states. I tend to focus, most of my focus was on Afghanistan and Pakistan, but there are people that specialize in Iran. There are people that specialize in Uzbekistan and Tajikistan and all these different places. But refugees are by nature stateless. They don't have a country, and there's no representative country in Afghanistan. So any one of those are affected and can no longer fly just based on the rules as they're given. So.
Okay.
No matter what the situation is, right? This is blanket. It doesn't matter what, how sick your parents are, or, how much in danger you are. None of that is in a factor right now. It's a simple binary choice. Right now, the answer is no, we are not going to take refugees. So, Afghan or otherwise.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay. That is so stressful too, on top of everything. How often are veterans sponsors?
I've sponsored a family. I know another veteran, Jess, helped sponsor a family out of Pakistan. She was a highly educated woman. She now lives in Massachusetts. She had a master's degree. She had done all this work. Veterans do it almost all the time. And actually, the government, over the past 3 years, was trying to really move to this model. So if a veteran actually was on a Welcome Corps team, which is a group of people, they would actually give them like $2,500 from a grant, right? So you could actually help kind of build up the pipeline. So yeah, veterans are in all the time. And in the families we don't necessarily sponsor directly, we're always doing kind of advice and consent and talking to people and, showing them, connecting to other people. But veterans are incredibly heavily involved in this movement and have been. A lot of us have been in it since the beginning. I got my phone call. I received my calling, so to say, on August 16th, 2021. And it was my interpreter and was like, bro, I need your help. And so a lot of us now, this is the mission. So I hope that answered your question.
Oh, it does. It does. Because that kind of calling does help a lot of people that do get impacted with moral injury. And I can see a lot of veterans. I mean, myself, my own calling was actually tied in with Vanessa Guillen with that. And that's how I found myself where I am now. So I understand with how that goes with moral injury. So I could see how veterans can find themselves part of the calling and part of the sponsorship as well. So if veterans do become a sponsor, do they have to actually know the person that wants to, they have to directly know the person that wants to apply for it?
There are 2 types of sponsorships. So you can actually, it gets really, there's a lot of details to it, but essentially most veterans sponsor someone they know. And then in that case, you have to raise most of the money. If you are willing to sponsor a family you don't know. So for us, it's Afghans, right? So we want to know the family. We're usually, but there was also another way you could do it where you'd say, I'll accept the family. We'll raise the money and then they will do all the, actually, they don't have to raise the money. That was the benefit to not knowing. So there was 2 ways they could fund. You could self-fund, and I could reach out to a friend and put them through the process and get them through the vetting and get them here. And I have a family right down the street. That's the one I sponsored, lives in Lowell, Massachusetts, one town over.
I know that town at least.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I think there were different ways you could do it. There were different ways you could sponsor. Plus, there was the traditional routes, right? They were like SIVs coming through that would have come through, and then they would arrive and they go through resettlement agencies and they get benefits. And I guess, again, SIVs will still be coming. It'll just be smaller numbers. There's not as many coming in. So.
Okay. All right. So how would other veterans try to help with this refugee program, especially for yours?
Yeah, absolutely. So just so in terms of the work we're doing, there's a ton of big organizations out there. There's Afghan Evac. There is Operation Recovery. There's just a ton of veteran stuff. You can go out and do them. There's a ton. If you really want to do something, if you could do something for the movement, for the veterans that are watching, go out and watch a couple of those different the different documentaries that have come out. And if you're really interested to understand what like Abbey Gate and stuff was, the British actually put one out, and I think it was called Evacuation. It's really good. Most organizations are looking for types of volunteers. So like Operation Recovery, like I said, Afghan Evac, Massachusetts Afghan Alliance is pretty local. So if you're in Massachusetts, John at massafghanalliance.org, we're a full 501c3 and we directly support Afghans in the community. We're not like we're really small. We have a really small board. We just got our 501c3 this year. But there are organizations out here looking, and I'm always around, so Steph can connect you too.
Yes. You can always find me because as a political veteran, you can Google me and find all the other things, and I can help you guys out. And I mean, honestly, for any veterans out there, they're also looking for, trying to do it in your local area as well. And it's not in Massachusetts or area. We could try to figure it out and help you out. So just reaching out can also help for a lot of people. Oh my goodness. So we still have some time left.
All right.
Do you have any good stories, I guess, for what's going on with Afghan families right now?
Yeah, I'll give you something really quick. I like to, it's kind of tough time, so I'll say something positive. One of the things that I've really observed, and one of the things Mass Afghan really wants to do is support Afghan women. I think one of the things that sometimes people are, I don't know why, but people don't necessarily expect the same things out of refugees generally, not just Afghans, but these women, these amazing women from Afghanistan, and this is the reason my co-founder is an Afghan woman, they show up. And if they're not in school, they're like, how do I get into school? And if they're in high school, they're like, where am I going to college? And then if they're in college, they're like, where am I getting my master's degree? Oh, I want to work. And they're out there. And this is the reason this action was so important, because all of us knew that when the Taliban took over, that these amazing women that we've supported would not have the chance to blossom like that, or they wouldn't have the freedom to like expand out and do these things. And they're incredibly hardworking people. And I have seen just so many successful. And the other thing is always American babies. Afghan American babies are absolutely the best thing in the world. And since the evacuation, I've seen hundreds of them now. And all of that moral injury, which is still difficult, and the work we've done is still hard, has really paid off in that way. So just understand, all the veterans, Afghan vets, Iraq vets, that these people are well taken care of, and they're in your communities, and you just got to look for them.
Yep. Yeah, and I've been seeing an increase on different areas, especially for Afghan, even in Jacksonville, Florida, where I'm at right now. The population's actually bloomed in the last couple of years, which has been really amazing. And even a few churches I've seen that's been sponsoring families as well. So it's been really beautiful that's been happening. A little bit, I mean, guess down to the dark of what's going on for some of the families that's living in Afghanistan right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's brutal. So I think one of the things that I told you is we have these reunification families. So one of the families, they all have daughters. And so imagine being an Afghan man in the United States with your daughters overseas. And so a few months ago, I've had situations where the daughters show up to school one day and the entire school's getting arrested, and they were just late. And that's the only reason. Now, remember, the father's right down here, right? Like you're totally, you have no power. There's nothing you can do to help your family, and they almost get arrested. I've seen videos of families, murders in families, like people all of the worst stuff that the Taliban can do, and be like, this is my daughter lived and her cousin didn't make it, and they'll show the video. And so I think some of the thing is you got to kind of understand that it's real. I mean, we all went to war, right? It's all real stuff. So I think those are the darker things, is the people that are separated. I really have a hard time. You can't empathize, right? So you can sympathize, but they are hurting, and they tell you. And the kids, those teenage kids, we have a kid that's about to graduate high school, and he hasn't seen his mom since he was like 14. Like, man, could you even imagine? Like, I can't.
Right.
So it is exactly what you think it is there. The women get beat. There's sexual assaults. There's really, it is as ugly as you imagine. And I continuously communicate. I still have families that I help support in Afghanistan, SIVs, and women that I've supported in Pakistan. However, we now have to reevaluate how we're going to support them and how long we can, afford to. A lot of the money we use is volunteer monies, right? So we're funding these things ourselves, because our 501 operates here, right? So we have different job here. But yeah, it's as bad as you think it is.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Now there has been, I remember back when the Taliban was taking back over, and there was a lot of concern for those that have worked for the U.S. forces, the interpreters and their families and things. Were they also targeted by the Taliban when they were taking over?
Yeah. So our first group of families that we got out was 4 families of interpreters, and throughout the whole action, we had been moving them around, and they were chased. I mean, we had intel, we had live action OSIN intel that we had worked with, but they were absolutely on the run for their lives. The Taliban were trying to find them. They were trying to find anybody that really cooperated or helped arrest anybody. They went really hard after A&P. One of the things during evacuation, we helped a bunch of teachers because they started like really, really go after the teaching community. So overall, yeah, I think all of those people were targeted. The Taliban are exactly what you think they are. And they, as my Afghan friends and I like to say, we call them khars. So a khar is a donkey. And it is like the worst swear you can call somebody in Dari. So we call the Taliban khars. And I do not believe They will be in power forever. I think it will come back. I think the Afghans will come back. Go Afghans.
Yeah, 'cause there's only so much that a person or a people can take until it can, because empires don't last forever.
And they're educated and they have communication. This isn't the 1990s with no phones. Their families still talk to each other, right? So people at home know what's going on over there. And but at least they have that connection. And a lot of Afghans know they have the support of the veteran community, right? We're really vocal about it. There is probably not a refugee community that has had, other than the Vietnamese and the Vietnam generation, a group of people like this. And after the collapse of Afghanistan, just to finish that up, I found so much more empathy and just understanding of the Vietnam experience, right? I all of a sudden had something really, really visceral in common. And so they would probably get what I'm talking about.
Yes, I've heard that a lot. My mentor in this, especially on the advocacy side, is a Vietnam veteran era person, and she was a journalist at the time. And so there was a lot of things that she was like, bringing back all of the stuff of the pullout from Vietnam, and it was just as bad. And the thing is that when the pullout of Afghanistan, and there was a lot of media, there was a lot of videos and cameras. Everybody's got it on their phones. With Vietnam, it was so limited on the media that they could capture. And so everybody's attitude towards it could be a bit different from what's going on. So, oh my goodness. So we just got a message, at least for one of our background people, which will be a great question to ask.
All right.
I'd like to add this on there. So I know John can see it, so he's smiling already. So this one is, what do you tell young people that are thinking about signing up in the military today?
Here's what I say. I especially say that just try it. I'm a heat-seeking missile, man. I'll say, if you don't have a path, look, if you're going to go to college and you have a plan, go with your plan, right? I think, though, if you're curious and you want to try a different way, what the military has given to me was, I was a knucklehead, right? I was a young kid. I didn't really know much of anything. I thought I knew a lot of things, but what it really did was it grounded me, and it taught me to care about other people and to work in a team and to understand that there's just a bigger world. I got to go I've been to 13 countries. I got to stay in Europe. I was a reservist my whole career, and I did the jobs. I did all the jobs that I wanted to do. I met the people I wanted to meet. And then I was really fortunate. I know it sounds crazy, but I was really fortunate after the evacuation to make such incredible friends that I was able to reconnect. I mean, years after I had retired, right? So the people that you meet and the relationships that you build, and these people will really support you, right? These are the people that really are ride or die for you. Unlike a lot of civilian friends, right? It's a little bit different out there in the civilian world. You got
I can definitely sympathize with that, and yes, being the reservist as well. But I had a little bit of a different experience, mostly because I've only did my deployment to Kuwait. Did a little bit of traveling while we were there, but only a small amount. But the thing is that with my experience with the Army Reserve was that I also was able to go to 45 states out of the 50 states. Right. Did a lot of traveling for them and working at higher levels and working in places that you would never imagine you would be in, which was an amazing experience, doing things, because I don't think I've said it much on this show, but I've joked because I grew up in a Navy town, but I never wanted to end up on a ship. And then I ended up being on a ship anyway.
You did. You absolutely did.
Loading ships. And so it was still an amazing experience. Thank God I didn't have to live on them. But it's things that you could never get outside of the civilian world. And then learn so many different skills other than also just your MOS, because you learn so many other things, and it's just amazing.
You know, it's interesting. I met a Vietnam veteran the other day. I was just sitting next to him and we were just chatting about something. And I was like, you know what? We were talking the same thing, like the things that happen in the military that don't happen anywhere else. And this guy all of a sudden starts telling me about his time on an aircraft carrier. And he told me about climbing up that mast and like this light bulb. And he knew every detail he was on the Midway, right? And he knew every detail. Yeah. And at the end of it, he had this big sigh and he goes, I haven't been able to tell a military story like that forever. And and I got it because not just because I was on a ship, because I was in the military, and I understand that if somebody tells me at 3 a.m. to climb a stupid mast, I'm climbing up the mast, and then I get to tell that story for the rest of my life. But I think that's the thing about the military is it gave me stability. It gave me a foundation. If you're not disciplined, it gives you discipline. And I remained kind of undisciplined my whole career, but I learned how to manage it in a functional way and to affect positive change. And I think, and for people that do join the military, if you come out of this and you're like, that dude convinced me, a couple of things. Find a good NCO if you're enlisted. Find a good NCO if you're a lieutenant. Don't buy a car off the base, and take pictures of your friends, because you never know when they're not going to be there. Because I've lost 5 friends. So, but it's all worth it. It was all worth it. So absolutely.
Oh yes. I never imagined, and you wouldn't even recognize me if you knew me from high school or middle school, because I would not be speaking. And the military did that for me, and sometimes cannot stop speaking now, thanks to the military. But it's so many things that you didn't realize that you're going to actually run into and experience. So it's this wonderful plethora of things that can happen. God, the flashbacks of that time that you were there. So I'm sorry. But this is what happens when you join the military. You'll run into people, and then you'll hopefully catch up with them on social media, and also try to link up again and have these great experiences. And meeting them up again has always been an amazing, great thing, especially nowadays with the military, with social media. You could still get connected. There's many people from the previous generations of ours that are still trying to find people that they served with because of the lack of social media at the time. Absolutely. And so it can be very difficult. So it's going to be really great going on. And so we really hope that this doesn't discourage anybody from joining the military. We still encourage people to join if they can, when they can.
Hard stuff gives you character. That's the thing. When you get through the stuff in the military and you get in the civilian world and you hear somebody complaining about a milk fell, a milk jug fell on the floor, you're like, just pick it up. Who cares? Nobody cares. Nobody cares about your milk jug or whatever the issue is, the small issue. But, and I'm going to say something really quick too, because I was at one point, you're saying you too, but we retired on the same. One of the things that I love post-military, post-retirement and seeing people is how successful you're being, right? To see Steph, which is weird to call you that, but to see you here, that gives me pride. That really is amazing to see that people have been successful and continue to move forward. And see all the people that you came up with. Now that I'm out, people that are now E8s, and some of them are warrant officers, and we're all part of their legacy, which is really the thing about the military, that your legacy does live on. There was some Roman doing a knife hand. And that's where it came from, 6,000 years ago, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's been an NCO thing for longer than any of us. So, but I'm glad that you're doing well, and to see you on the show, and the invitation to come here is great. And I can talk about this stuff anytime. And I can talk about my mental health journey if you want me to come back, and all those things. But keep supporting Afghans, and keep anybody out there, write some letters, especially Republicans right now. And this isn't a Democratic Republican thing. Afghan Evac has never been partisan. We all work together. Republicans are the ones in power now, and we need really Republican veterans to start reaching out. They're the ones with influence, and I'm willing to work in their system and try the best I can, but we're going to need help to get the rest of the Afghans out for sure.
Can you pick a few Republican?
Mike Waltz. Mike Waltz is the guy everybody's trying to get to the president. I forget what position he took, but he's the one closest to him. But any really Republican that's willing to listen, I think. What's the guy in Texas? There's a bunch. Crenshaw. There's a lot. You can just.
First I thought of.
Yeah. And those people are still fighting for it. So we're trying to figure out so they can either loosen the strings or whatever, so we can get these 1660 out and then continue getting Afghans. We're trying to get a carve out.